Hello and welcome to the Free Yourself from Heartbreak interview series. I am your host, Rebecca Boatman, and today I am so honored to bring you Michael Kline. He is an expert on emotions and success. He was the turnaround president of a franchise company with 35 locations, then a 6-time successful entrepreneur. Get this, at age 50, he discovered he had never experienced the feeling of unconditional love, which launched a complete 180-degree turnaround in his life. He is now convinced that what we really want is love and connection. I know I can relate to that. As a certified Jack Canfield transformational trainer and master certified RIM facilitator, his private practice helps professional women and a few smart men who want the second half of their life to be a heck of a lot better than the first half. He teaches RIM as an advanced transformational tool to help coaches, therapists, and other helping professionals produce a more flourishing world. Hello, Michael, and welcome.
Hi, Rebecca. Thanks for having me. Pleasure.
We were laughing earlier about how I have a funny bun, and he was saying how he could go buy a man bun.
Yeah, it's what you don't find on Facebook at Christmas time. It's man bun wigs.
Man bun.
It's so wrong. I think I need one. So I can look cool when I'm working at a coffee house or something, you know.
Yes,
I mean, doing my work sitting in a coffee house, not working at a coffee house. I don't want to be a barista. That's not my thing. Although there are days.
You can't be a barista. Us women need you to continue being an emotion and success expert.
Okay.
So
that makes me happy.
Good. So, our listeners on here, as we talked about, they're either going through a heartbreak or they are considering a breakup or they're just ready to love again. And I love, when we spoke before and you were speaking into how we can love someone in relationship, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the conditions of the relationship are healthy for us. And I would just love for you to elaborate on that and your take on that.
Yeah, what struck me when we were talking about unconditional love in my own journey, discovering that I had never felt that from a parent as a child. And then when we started talking about it in the context of relationship, and I thought, is that a big thing to ask for a relationship, to ask for unconditional love in a mate, in a life partner, or in a spouse? And I'm not quite sure, because I think it really opens up the discussion about accepting and loving someone and accepting the relationship are two very different things. So if you have a spouse who is abusive, that's a condition that's unacceptable. And does that complicate when we talk about unconditional love, that we unconditionally love someone and we can't live with them? That's a reasonable combination. That we don't want to get confused with the lack of conditions, that there are conditions on the relationship, but there may or may not be conditions on the love. Does that cover that adequately? I don't know. I think that we can fall out of love. So I don't know, how do we predict that love will always be there? I don't know that. I'm not sure.
I love that. I love your honesty. I love your transparency. And this is an interesting topic when, because as women, and I just want to speak into this part a little bit because I relate to what you're saying. And I know that the listeners can relate too. If we're ever in a situation where we love someone and the behavior isn't appropriate or acceptable, or we're like, I don't know if this is okay, just being careful and watching your compassion, right? Like watching your compassion, not allowing your compassion to be played against you, and to set, really healthy boundaries so that you are setting yourself up, into a successful relationship. And
absolutely. Yeah. In fact, with that word compassion, that opens up, that takes us down around another bend.
Let's hear it.
It seems now, in most of the women and my women clients, I have learned from watching my own sisters we grew up in the early 70s, and where so often in our culture, women are taught to take care of everyone else. Take care of your father, take care of your little brother, take care of your older brother. It's women's role to take care of everyone except for themselves. And that is so ingrained in our culture. Even today, I still see it with my nieces and with younger women, but not so much. So how do we separate compassion
Mm-hmm.
from empathy and taking on the responsibility of everyone else's problems and everyone else's feelings.
Mm-hmm.
That we want to separate empathy from compassion, that you can be compassionate without stepping into the role of taking on others' problems, without making their problem your problem. We don't actually have to walk in their shoes and feel their pain in order to have compassion. And you can still walk away even while still feeling love and still feeling compassion. Because ultimately what happens is we empty ourselves and then we have nothing else to give. And it's not self-care is not selfish. So we need to love ourselves, be kind to ourselves, and then we can love others and be kind to others. And so I think that's really important to know that it's good. Yes, it's good to be compassionate. It can be unhealthy with being too much empathic. Does that make
Wow, we
sense?
could literally do a whole interview just on this topic. Because, I love how you say it's so ingrained in our culture, and I can relate, and I know people listening can relate. And so I have another question for you. And I love that you separated the two, compassion and empathy. And, what versus, walking in their shoes, because as women, we're hearing stories. Sometimes we'll hear the story and we're like, we're in it. Like we're emotionally, like we're in the story. Like and then we're like, whoa, like that's not happening to me, but I'm like, because we paint pictures so well, right? Or women paint pictures so well, and then all of a sudden we're experiencing it. So like, for example, I have this trick. If or you can call it a trick, call it whatever. If I realize I'm getting too involved when I'm supporting, is I'll just kind of like go like this, like I'm like cutting myself from what's going on. Like I'll physically do that and then release it so that I'm not carrying it or holding on to it. Now with women going through a heartbreak, or whether they're ready to date again, or in any sort of relationship, obviously, we're innately compassionate and empathetic. So what do you have any other tips, I should say, not tricks, tips that you could give them that would support them, to understand when they're being compassionate or when they're being empathetic, like really distinguishing the difference, and how you really step into compassion versus like emptying yourself?
Yeah, well, you're right. We could do a whole, we
I
could spend
know.
hours talking about empathy and compassion and self-care. I love the protection idea. I think you do that to show off that cool ring you were wearing. It was
Yeah. This is a gift from my
yeah,
friend
good for you.
Carla. She
I
made
like it.
it.
So I think there's a trick that we use in the work that I do in helping people clear stuck emotions. Uh, Oftentimes clients ask, well, how do you not take that home with you? Or how do you shelter yourself or protect yourself from taking on, really negative energy, maybe from a client, or taking on their stuff? And so one of the things that we teach in our RIM training is to literally take your finger and draw a circle around you. Just you can turn around and draw that imaginary circle that's no longer so imaginary. It becomes real, just like you did with your cutting with your scissors. So you can draw a circle around you to create that shield, that invisible that energy shield between you and the person's stuff you're taking on. And there's another terrific trick that I learned from Jack Canfield. He teaches in his retreats. You can close your eyes and visualize water shooting up, like a water fountain, like the Bellagio Hotel, all around you, a circle of water fountains coming up from the earth all around you, and in white light. So it's the white light and the water coming up as just an image of that, because your body can't really tell the difference. Your unconscious doesn't know the difference between a well-imagined event and a real event.
Wow.
So it becomes very real to your unconscious that you have this field around you, just as it becomes very real for you when you cut something away and create this. So imagination is so powerful that, in fact, that's I knew I would get a segue here. How do we segue from this discussion about empathy and self-care to go to where we are with the relationship? So now you're thinking about a breakup, or you're recovering from a breakup. Are you ready to make another relationship or go to a deeper level with the relationship? And what am I hanging on to that I want out of my life so that I'm free to love again or to move on? And there's really only three things we have any control over. And those are the thoughts we think, the images we hold in our head, and the actions we take. And the world is full of experts on how to shift your thinking, and the world's full of experts on telling you what you should do. And that's what girlfriends and wine are for, right?
Yeah. Maybe some ice cream.
And ice cream, right? So my particular interest in an area of expertise is on the images we hold in our head. So that because the images, we can use our imagination to create a very new, very real, impactful result and a very impactful change in our life. So it isn't just a shift in thinking, but we can actually create a shift in how we feel, how we really are. For instance, there was a woman. This was one of Dr. Deb's client. Dr. Deb Sandell is the creator of this RIM method that we use, and she has a story in her book about a woman who was ready for a new relationship, and in her session, she spontaneously went to a memory of being 10 years old and standing in the lunch line in school, and the boy in front of her had turned around and told her she was ugly. And don't take on too much empathy now. Don't cry.
I know.
We'll talk about that. And so this was the memory. And as an adult woman, middle-aged woman, she's feeling, I'm grown up enough to let that go. Why is that coming up? This can't really be impactful in my relationship. And what happened through the power of imagination, she was able to redo a dialogue with this boy out loud. So it became very real to her unconscious. And so this time she had a dialogue with him and discovered that this was the extent of this boy's romantic skills. Some boys never get better. It's the way it is.
This is true.
That he was actually looking for her attention. And that was what came out of his mouth. And that he actually was attracted to her. And in realizing that through having this imagined out loud dialogue with him, then she realized that she's actually always been attractive to men instead of always sensing that she wasn't. And because the unconscious treats that much like a real event, she now has the emotional memory of that being a very real event and a very positive event. And she walked out of her session a couple of inches taller, I think, than she went in, and absolutely glowing. And shortly thereafter met a wonderful man, and they're now happily married and living their life's dreams. And that's not uncommon. That it's just not uncommon. The suffering is optional.
Yeah.
And we can use the power of image in our minds to create events that really shift how we feel instead of just the intellect. Not that there's anything wrong with intellectual reframing. That's terrific. It's very useful. In therapy and in coaching, there's a lot of reframing and perspective shifts. But this is a shift in how we actually feel, and it creates a new emotional memory in our unconscious. We actually are different, as opposed to thinking, I know I really should be different.
Yeah, the shitting. We shit on ourselves, right?
All the time. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael, for painting that picture. I really enjoy hearing that. Like she went, so can I just call this girl Sarah to give context? Yeah. Okay. So Sarah, was smart and came to you and decided to do this, to do RIM, or to go through this program, RIM program. So with that being said, I loved how, when she realized, okay, this moment happened when I was 10 years old, and all of a sudden I, made up X. So what was it that, what are the thoughts, so that anyone listening can understand and relate to this? What are the thoughts that then allowed her to realize, okay, wow, maybe I have some inner work to do, or some, lingering stuff in the background that I could, dive in to then create new results? Because that's what I'm hearing. So what are like the surface conversation that happens, or the not only just the thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that someone can recognize, that so that they know, okay, I would be forwarded by this. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the good news is that piece of work was done in one session.
Wow.
It wasn't a discovery of, I have some work to do.
Wow.
That would be the result of, say, a traditional talk therapy or a left brain kind of more intellectual coaching session or discussion. Then this isn't just realizing the root of the problem. It's now dissolving it, because what happens is when we actually go in the session, we actually trust that the unconscious knows what needs to be dealt with. So when the spontaneous memory shows up of that first time you were bullied on the playground and when you were 6, or the lunch line scene, or whatever the scene is, oftentimes our clients are surprised by something that came up that seems so untraumatic.
Minuscule. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and sometimes certainly we work with a lot of people who have PTSD or have a lifetime of big traumas that have happened or childhood traumas. And this isn't about going back and redoing those traumas and telling the story again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not into the stories. We want to get away. We are not our stories. So
Yeah.
we do want to identify the emotion that's stuck in the body
Mm-hmm.
and to release it. And that happens very spontaneously and organically. It isn't about us being the expert to figure out what needs to shift. It's the client goes inside. And so we guide you through a process to find what that moment is, that first time, in this case, where this woman did not feel attractive.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so simple. It became very, very apparent to her. The work was done when she spoke out loud to this boy what it was like when you called me ugly. And she really got to express everything. And then to move into this boy, and you look out of his eyes at her and speak for him what's there. And that's where so much healing and empathy comes into, where he gets to speak. And so she's using her own imagination to speak and she realizes that what he would be saying. And so it's more than say, well, what would he say if he were speaking? It's actually speaking for him. So it kind of comes through you in a different way.
Wow.
And oftentimes that's where we find the healing, empathy, and even forgiveness and even gratitude. That something shifts. No, so imagine doing that with your mother as your 8-year-old self, or your 15-year-old self, that time she really ticked you off when you were going to a party or whatever it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who doesn't have, a mother or father's voice stuck in their head?
Absolutely.
There's something that wants to be expressed and freed from our bodies from that early life programming. And we can still do that. It's that the emotions occur in the body. This is the science now is validating. Dr. Deb's brilliance with neuroscience is now validating this. Dr. Candace Pert in The Molecules of Emotion is her book. Talks about how emotions occur in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And as the river of emotions is flowing through our body, it's natural to want to resist the negative emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So here comes fear, here comes sadness, here comes whatever it is. And so we put up this dam to block the river of emotions, to stop the negative emotions that we're feeling it in our gut, or we're feeling it in our heart, or wherever we're feeling it. And we stop it, and now it stays stuck.
Yeah, they're repressing it.
Yeah. And so when we allow the negative emotions to flow, they will dissipate naturally. And it's never too late to go to where the emotion was stuck, whether that happened when we were 6 or whether that happened yesterday. And we can go to the time and place where it got stuck, and we can gently lower the dam and easily allow that to flow through and change everything.
Wow.
Now imagine we have a different belief about ourselves. Do you walk a little taller and speak a little different? And do we just, it's common for people to feel when they've done this work that, wow, I feel 10 years later and 10 years younger and 10 pounds lighter. And they carry themselves different. The skin instantly changes and eyes change.
They're lighter.
It's metaphorically and literally oftentimes, so that because so much of this emotional weight's carried in the body too.
Yeah.
And that's just not necessary.
Oh,
So as we go towards new relationships with a different feeling about ourselves, and I think about, now I've been in the same relationship for 29 years, and just getting happier and better in recent years, because we're both on this path of self-awareness and this work together. But I don't think that would have survived. I don't think that would have worked if we weren't both on this journey. And in my relationships with friends, with clients, with business associates, and I have a whole new, it's like half the world I was shutting out because of my self-concept. And at 50 years old, when I discovered this idea around feeling love, I discovered that until I felt that feeling through a RIM session, really sensing my own mother's unconditional love. I have no memory of my biological mother, even though she died when I was 7, and I have lots of other memories from prior to her death, but not of her. And too many memories of my adopted mother that was very conditional and made it very clear. So, but when I gained that experience of that feeling of unconditional love and of safety, that really made me realize how I judged and judged people by maybe just the energy they gave off. I can't figure out what it is. There's a certain people, both men and women, that I felt like they weren't my tribe. They weren't my people. It's like I'm going through life at 50 years old, and it's the 7th grade, and I'm in the lunchroom wondering what table is safe to sit down at for lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That table doesn't
Yeah.
look safe. This one does. And I realized that at 50 years old, we shouldn't be living that way.
Yeah.
And yet here we are in the 7th grade all the time. And we want to approach this person. They don't look approachable. What makes us think they are or aren't? Oh, they won't want to play with me. And I realized that there are adults in my life that I wasn't playing with because I felt like they wouldn't want to play with me.
Absolutely.
And now I just don't feel that way. Now there's nowhere I can't play. And that goes to self-concept and self-love and self-acceptance. And the images we hold in our head about ourselves really, I think, has to come first. Then we can boldly and safely and confidently go out there and have something valuable to contribute to a relationship.
I love that that I just acknowledge you for sharing that, for sharing your own personal experience, and for really just diving into the importance of, recognizing how are we playing with other people.
Yeah.
And it's so everything that you just said, it's beautiful. And I think about how if someone breaks up with us or we're breaking up with someone, like there can be that, sometimes people get afraid to then open their heart again, to then love again. So, and I loved how you talked about like the inquiry, like the asking questions, like place yourself in their shoes and place yourself in your shoes. So is there like three questions that like a 3-step or 4-step, 5-step, whatever it is, that a woman who would, if they're going through a breakup and they want to heal, to love again, rather than like shelling up and then not playing, that they could ask themselves? I know you kind of touched on it, but I just was wondering if you have any that come to mind when I ask you this, that they can say, okay, and take inquiry to ask themselves.
So did you just ask me to invent a 3-step process on the fly?
I just love when you said, I love when you said, you place yourselves in their shoes and see what they would say to you. And you went through the dynamic or the conversation. And I think that's very powerful. And, and how you said it's so important, because if we don't, face it or experience it, then we repress it. And I can 100% relate to everyone listening. Like, I lost someone very close to me, and until I was, to death, and I held on to it. And then once I was willing to actually go there was so much freedom. Oh my gosh. It was like letting a freaking monster out of its cage. And it was terrifying. Oh my gosh. It was so terrifying, but it was the best thing I've ever done. And not only if we lose someone into, to death, if they die, but also in relationship, it's a loss. It feels like a loss. So I love that you went into playing, kind of role playing, and that sounds like I've never actually done that. And that's why I'm so fascinated by it. And I would just love if, in a nutshell, if you wanted to like go over that little piece again.
In a nutshell, here's the thing. And yes, I'm going to give you a solution. Actually, this makes sense. So I'm glad you asked. The pressure's off of me.
Okay, good.
When I said we trust that the unconscious knows what needs to be dealt with, that I very seldom ask a client questions, because it isn't an intellectual discussion. It's not that I don't care about the story, it's that it's not really helpful. I mean, a little bit of context is fine, but really, if what's really driving the problem is your belief that all men will leave their wives when they're older, because that's what you were told your whole childhood by your mother. I know a client who was told that and believed that. And so she really had a difficult time committing herself fully to her husband, expecting to be left. Her belief was, her deep-rooted belief was that this was a temporary relationship. And so, or if you believe that you're a fraud in some way, if people really knew me and knew about where the shame that I carry in my life, then nobody would love me. My friends wouldn't even have me. We carry guilt and shame, and that isn't necessary to carry anymore. And so if it's some more complex Doesn't have to be a nefarious thing, but it could be a complex thing that we're not even aware of. And like for me I wasn't working on this issue. I'd had a very successful life, a successful relationship. I had no idea I had this hidden block with how I saw people. And by definition, a hidden block is hidden. So we don't know what we don't know. Yeah. So in our process, the process itself helps you identify what the real issue is. Right. And then we deal with that. But so the steps that I was mentioning are assuming that we're in the right place dealing with the right issue and the right person. So, if we were to get into a calm space, say in meditative state, and to really call in you can call in your own resources to call in, whether that be an angel or a deity or a grandmother or something from nature, whatever that is, or a mentor, spirit guide, that sort of thing. You can have a dialogue just there, just with that mentor or with that resource, in a closed eye meditative state, and see what wisdom is brought forth. And if there's a conversation that needs to be had, that yes, you can use your imagination to have a conversation with an ex, or with a parent, or with somebody you're in a relationship with now, or even through an imagination. And I've done this in several sessions with women where they've had a conversation with a man they haven't yet to meet. And it's really, really interesting what the unconscious calls forward from the future.
I love that.
But now in that dialogue, you can really gain a lot of clarity about what it is you're really looking for, because that's not necessarily an intellectual left brain question. To ask you, what do you want? We may never get to an answer, but to have a dialogue with a man from your future or from your past about what you want, what this was like, and what you want now, that speaking that out loud, or having that dialogue, and then imagine looking out of his eyes back at you, and what he's saying, and speak that. Yeah, it's a fun exercise. And there are several ways to do it. I was going to mention, as a RIM facilitator, that is my go-to tool, and it's a tool that I teach to coaches and social workers and therapists to use with their clients. And the creator of that is Dr. Deb Sandella. And she has this book called Goodbye, Hurt and Pain. And in the book, it's 7 simple steps to health, love, and success. But Goodbye, Hurt and Pain, in the book, at the end of most chapters, there's some step-by-step do-it-yourself exercises. And you can do this with a friend. I was talking with a woman just the other day who had read the book, had a friend read it, and then they did a session on each other using just following the script in the book. How that could work. And very, very powerful. Now, it's not going to go as deep as we would working with a professional facilitator, and dealing up and just going to the greatest depth and getting rid of identifying the biggest issue and eliminating the core issue, or dissolving that core stuck emotion in a single session is not what we expect to happen from the do-it-yourself tips. But it's a fantastic, safe place to start, and you'll see real movement.
Thank you so much, Michael, for sharing all of that. And, that leads us directly into, I would love for you to mention what you have for this audience for free. And I want to say thank you just for your time today. This is very valuable, extremely valuable. Like, I love everything that you said. I love that we dove into compassion and empathy. And I really appreciate you and the impact that you're making in the world. And I'm sure the audience is dying to hear what the free gift is as well.
Excellent. So, thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be here and to share this work. So, what I thought we would do is offer a free group RIM session.
Wow.
And this works great by the phone. My individual clients work by Skype or by phone from all over the world, and we can do a group by phone. So we'll do a free conference call .com event. And what I'll do is I'll offer several dates coming up in the next week to 10 days or so that you can go online to the link there and you can sign up for which date works best for you. We don't record these, so it's a live event. That's why we thought we'd offer multiple dates so that you have a better chance of finding one. But don't sign up thinking you'll just get a recording, because we're not going to send out a recording. They're often very personal. If it's a small group, we might have time for more personal sharing. If it's a larger group, a little less sharing. But so we'll do a live about an hour to an hour and a half
Mhm.
group session. And so it's not a webinar. We're not so much teaching you how to do it, and we're not selling you anything else to buy from it. It's just to have a experience, to
Mm.
have the group room experience, and to let go of some hurt and pain and open up what's there for you. And it's just amazing, even in the groups, when I hear back from people, the big shifts they have and the new awarenesses they have and the things that they
Mm.
free themselves of. So yeah, we want everybody that can. I mean, as much as we can spread this goodness in the world, we want it out there. So that's the deal. So we'll do about an hour and a half free session. We'll put 3 dates on there for you to choose from, and we'll look forward to connecting with everyone on one of those calls.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Michael. And
Oh, very welcome.
the everyone listening, the link is below the video. So we appreciate you for watching us and for being a part of this interview series. And thank you so much, Michael, for being here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.